Let's begin with a word of prayer. Almighty God and Father, as we continue to study the differences between evolution and creationism, we pray that your Spirit would guide our hearing, the things that we study and learn, and especially as we read your word, that you would fill us with knowledge and hope, but most of all with faith, so that we can continue to believe those things which you have said in your word, which we know to be true, and stand firmly on them even when the rest of the world around us doesn't believe. Be with us now and be present among us as you promised to do. For Jesus' sake, amen. All right, I am hopeful that we will be able to use our Bibles at some point, but for now I'm just going to rehash a little bit of what we said last time, and then we'll move forward. So the last thing we were talking about was information theory, which says that cells are coded, C-O-D-E-D. That's what enables them to reach their full potential, whatever that is. Hair cells, muscle cells, brain cells, whatever. They're all coded. They all have information at the genetic level. So if evolution is going to take place, where does it have to happen first? At the cellular level. Yeah, you can't change the appendages or limbs or whatever of an organism without first changing at the molecular level. So the bullet point towards the end there, it says almost all cellular mutation is detrimental. At least at first it is. So only foresight would enable natural selection to know that eventually those changes will be beneficial to the organism. For example, morals that come from the God gene, which we talked about last week. But the only examples we can find of beneficial changes that we do see, we do observe this, is the resistance that certain organisms have to viruses. So whether it's a plant or an insect, something meant to destroy them, the cellular mutation actually is beneficial to those organisms. However, when mutations take place, information is lost, destroyed. Yeah. So the organisms become simpler, not more complex. And that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, mutation happens, but it never makes something more complex. It always makes it more simple. So reproduction is therefore impossible unless the changes are immediate. Whatever your reproductive organs might be, unless they change immediately from one into something else, at some point in the transition they're not going to be useful. And it's during that time when they're not useful that evolution becomes impossible. All right, now moving on to new stuff. At least I think it is. Protein cells are essential for organic development and growth. These cells must be in a specific order, though, in order to bring life forth. So protein cells, those are essential, but they have to be in a certain order in order for life to come from them. In tests, it has been shown that during mutation, these protein cells do not become more complex, but rather less. They're not more complex, they're less complex. In other words, the information contained in those cells becomes less specific, which means information is lost, not gained. Therefore, just the reverse happens when something mutates. It doesn't evolve, it devolves. And that's something that we do witness in nature all the time. Things are constantly devolving. They are not evolving. Now, you might say, well, we see species or organisms changing all the time. You do. but that's called microevolution. Macroevolution is something different. Microevolution are changes that take place within a species. So you can have a variety of breeds of dog, and by extension, other types of canines, which would be wolves and coyotes and all that good stuff. But that's all changes within a species. Those that cause an organism to evolve into something completely new, that's called macroevolution. And there's been no observation of that ever happening in nature. So when you hear scientists talking about evolution, they're almost always talking about microevolution, which is true. Macro is not. Again, as I said weeks ago, but some of you weren't here for that, scientists don't make a distinction between micro and macroevolution. They treat it all the same, but it's not all the same. Some of it is observable, some of it is not, which is why we make that distinction as creationists.
What is their reasoning for not making the distinction?
Oh, because if you make a distinction, what are you acknowledging?
But I mean, they must have an argument ready.
I'm going to give it to you, which you probably already know. If you make a distinction, it means there's a difference. They say there's no difference. We can observe microevolutions. I mean, just for anybody, why can't we observe macroevolutions according to an evolutionist?
It takes millions of years.
It takes at least millions of years. Yeah, for evolution to happen. Well, we don't have millions of years. But they say that's how it happened. So they won't acknowledge that there is a difference between micro and macro, because they'll say, we are all evolving. It's just taking such a long period of time that it's not noticeable during our lifetime. So if they were to acknowledge a difference, it means they're going to acknowledge that some things are observable and some are not, and they're not going to concede that. They're going to say that everything is evolving, we just aren't going to live long enough to see it. But what we can observe are things that have allegedly already evolved in the past. And the thing that we notice about things that have evolved in the past is they look just like things that exist today. I don't understand why evolutionists try to make it seem like things existed long ago that don't exist now. They did exist back then, and they still exist now. Most of the creatures that don't exist anymore, and there are, if you know anything about zoology, and I don't, but if you know anything about it, how many organisms go extinct every year? I have no idea. But are there organisms that go extinct every year?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what they are, but they do. They go extinct every year. So over the last 7,000 years or so, animals have gone extinct. Specifically one type of animal, which we have fossilized remains of, but we don't see, at least we don't think we see, examples of them anymore. What am I talking about? Dinosaurs. But we do see dinosaurs. Alligators, crocodiles, those are dinosaurs, and they haven't changed. Not in thousands of years, and not in millions of years. They haven't changed. They haven't evolved. And now I don't know that this is what they would say. I'm just guessing. Why haven't they evolved? They're already the perfect killing machine. Things evolve because there's something that they need to change. Well, alligators and crocodiles don't need to change because they're already perfect. I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's what they would say. So, again, I've studied this a little more than you guys have, but not a lot more. And in my brief study of it, what I have found is there are many creatures alive today that we have fossilized evidence for existing thousands of years ago, or what they would say millions and billions of years ago. Maybe not billions of years ago, but certainly millions and hundreds of millions of years ago. Why is that? Why did they not evolve? Because they were already perfect, I guess? I don't know. So I'm guessing that's what they would say. But to answer your question once again, they don't acknowledge a difference because it would mean acknowledging that there is a difference, and they don't think there is. They just say there's evolution we can observe during our lifetimes, and evolution that we can't observe, but it's all the same, which we utterly reject as creationists. All right, information, this is getting back to the handout. Information is already written into their genetic code through breeding. This is related to the idea of inherited characteristics. So breeding, you do introduce new genetic information through breeding. When you guys had children, you introduced new genetic information to your child. They have some from you, some from your spouse. And that's written into their genetic code. It's part of their inherited characteristics. Now, as an aside, when an organism has a characteristic within their DNA, it may be dominant or dormant, which means it doesn't come out until later or maybe not at all. But it's in there. They will have it dominant or dormant. But the key bit of information is that information is always and already there. It's never added later. So your children all have inherited your genes. Whether it's dominant or dormant, we won't know or we don't know, but it's there. It's never added. Okay, it doesn't come along later on. Therefore, natural selection can only select from the available choices. It cannot create new ones or new choices. So again, natural selection is a thing. We observe that taking place all around us. But what we observe is that it chooses from already existing choices. It does not ever introduce new choices. Now there is an experiment done with flies, and it was meant to prove evolution. And so they had 10,000 generations of flies that were purposefully mutated. Okay, so you had 10,000 generations. How long does a fly live?
Hours.
Hours, a day or two. The reason I say a day or two is because there's been flies in our vehicle that were there the next day. So I'm thinking maybe 2 days. But I don't think I've ever seen a fly there for 3 days. So pretty short lifespan. So 10,000 generations would not take millions of years. I mean, it would literally take 10,000 days, 20,000 days at the most. I don't know what that figures out to in years. Someone who has a phone can look it up in exact years. But the results were that flies changed only as much as their genetic information allowed, or the genetic information that was already in them, their code, their genetic code. Only as much as their genetic code allowed. So, did they grow another set of wings? Maybe. Did they have extra eyes? Maybe. Did they have eyes that didn't work at all? Maybe. But it didn't go beyond that. They did not change any more than they already had that information in their genetic code. So in reality, the experiment proved the opposite. Evolution was proven to be even less possible. Certainly not more, but less. Yes? You have a question?
What was that one? They did not go what?
Go beyond that?
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I keep saying I'm going to have a sheet that you're looking at so I know what words to emphasize and which ones to not emphasize, and I keep forgetting. Yeah, they did not go beyond that, much less change into anything else. So it proved the opposite. Evolution is even less likely than they thought before. Now, the next point. Genetic researchers have determined that all human life came from an original set of parents in one place and time. All human life came from one set of original parents in one place at one time based on mitochondria research. Okay, so there's genetic information saying we all come from one set of parents. Who was that set of parents? Adam and Eve. You know, I thought about Noah and his wife, but I'm guessing, and I'm only guessing, their genetic information would have included stuff that came before them. So that's Adam and Eve. Those would be the original parents of us all. Just some cleanup points. DNA tests have been done on fossilized evidence. What they claim to be Neanderthal did not have the genetic capability of being related to man. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. The guy over in the jail that I visit every Friday, who firmly believes the Bible is true, but has lots of questions about how it's true. Thought that there was a Neanderthal man. Thought that there was a prehistoric, so to speak, human being called Neanderthal man. I disavowed him of that knowledge and said, no, there wasn't. There never has been a Neanderthal man. We have always existed exactly as we are now. Maybe more hair, maybe less hair, maybe taller, maybe shorter, but Adam and Eve did not look all that dissimilar from any of us now. So there was no Neanderthal man. And now genetics have helped us prove that, because they say genetically speaking, it's not related to man. It's just another form of ape. Anyhow, moving on. Known human genetic research shows that humans could not have existed more than 50,000 years ago. Could not. According to genetic research, not paleontology, not geology, not other types of ologies, but genetic research shows we could not have existed more than 50,000 years ago. Now, if you want to know how they know that, I don't know. I'm sure that I read it at one point, and I just took a note on it, and I didn't write down the actual research itself. But according to research, human beings could not have existed more than 50,000 years ago. Paleontologists believe that hominids dated back 63 million years. So that's what paleontologists would say, is some form of humanity existed 63 million years ago.
Are they
And yet-
basing that off of carbon testing then, or?
I don't know how they determined that.
Because carbon testing is nothing more than a theory, and that's what they're using their theory to prove their theory.
Right. Yep, we've covered that. It's called circular reasoning, and it's not necessarily helpful. And one of the reasons for that is because carbon doesn't degrade at a constant rate. It's variable, like everything else in our universe.
Well, in the sentence, it says paleontologists used to believe.
Oh, well, I probably, because of the sentence I haven't said yet. There's another sentence coming up, although I've changed it on yours and not on mine. So paleontologists used to believe that hominids dated back 63 million years. However, after 15 years of ignoring the research, paleontologists were forced to accept the biochemistry evidence. I don't know if there were any blanks in there that you had to fill in, but after 15 years of ignoring the research, paleontologists were forced to accept the biochemistry evidence. Quote, "We anthropologists were forced to admit we had been wrong, and that Sarek and Wilson were closer to the right track than any of us had even imagined." So, paleontologists have come around, at least to acknowledging that their initial conclusions were wrong. We do not go back 63 million years. Sarek and Wilson were researchers. I think they were the researchers that showed we couldn't go back more than 50,000 years. If you really want to know what that research was, you can look up Sarek and Wilson and figure out what they discovered. Moving on to the next point. There's a scientific adage that says, publish or perish. Okay? If you have some research, publish it. Otherwise, you're you're wasting everybody's time. In other words, show some results or get out. Publish or perish. Would you believe there is not one piece of published literature put forth by molecular scientists, which describe the process or even theorizes on the possibility of molecular evolution? Not one. Now, there's lots of things published by paleontologists and geologists and astronomers and other divisions of science. But when it comes to genetic, molecular evolution, there's not one piece of published literature describing how it happens or even theorizes on how it could happen. And yet most of them still agree that it's true. Which, I mean, if we could only give this Bible study to kids and make them aware of the things that they're hearing in the public school are just not true. But I'm afraid that their teachers versus me, they're going to believe their teachers. Or their parents. I mean, if their parents are teaching them good stuff at home, they'll hopefully believe their parents. But if it was just between me or their science teacher, I'm sure the science teacher would win out because, of course, he has science in his name. Which, as an aside, and this is not political, I know you want me to get political, but I'm not going to. Teachers aren't really all that bright. I mean, some of them might be, specifically in their particular area of expertise, at least alleged expertise. Hazel's bright. She has demonstrated that time and time again. She's more the exception than the rule. If you have the opportunity to talk with teachers and really plumb down the depths of their knowledge of whatever they're supposed to teach, they really don't know anything more than what's in the book. That's what they teach, what's in the book. If you go beyond that, they really don't know a lot more than that. Some of them do, no doubt about it. Some of them absolutely are really well versed in their particular area of study. But many more of them are not. And that's just something that you should know. And it's something your kids should know. The teachers, more often than not, but there are exceptions, just teach what's in the book. That's what they know. And if you know what's in the book, you know as much as your teacher does. Or almost as much as they do. So just keep that in mind. The teachers, even though they are literature and science and math and all of that, they really only know what's in their curriculum. All right, moving on to the next point. Darwin, who staunchly opposed caring for the poor, the mentally ill, even the sick, he thought vaccinations were bad because they allowed the weak members of humanity to perpetuate. All right, do you not have that, or am I on the wrong page? Nope, I'm on the wrong page. Dang it, never mind. I hear you flipping all these papers, and you did that on our first day, and I didn't catch it. This time I did. We are not yet at Darwin. We are on a discussion of social implications of evolution. Sorry. So that you have, right?
Yes.
All right. Sexual behaviors. Homosexuality, transgenderism, promiscuity of any kind, etc. Promiscuity. What does evolution say about that? It says it's natural. Because we are, of course, animals. And animals are promiscuous. If you allow them to be, anyway. So, why shouldn't humans be? I mean, just by a show of hands, how many of you have heard, either on TV or radio or on the internet, somebody say that monogamy is not natural? How many have heard anyone say monogamy is not natural for human beings? Not as many as I thought. Okay. Well, that's what some men and some women, I don't know how many, but some, have said. And they have, all types of research that shows it's true and this and that and the other thing. But the bottom line is we're all animals. So Animals are promiscuous, so why shouldn't we be? It's not natural for highly evolved animals, such as we are, to be monogamous. Well, that's just silly. Of course it's natural for us. When God created Adam, he created Eve, a wife, a partner for him. That a man should leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife. One spouse, not many, many partners. So promiscuity is not natural. It's not moral either, by the way. I'm pretty sure that most of us, all of us, have God's law written on our hearts telling us this isn't right, this isn't good. But we also know that our human morality has been corrupted by sin, so it's possible that some people have completely convinced themselves that they're not doing anything wrong. All right, next, homosexuality. Well, that actually contradicts evolution. If evolution is determined by genetic benefits. Because how would homosexuality help a species? Well, it wouldn't. I mean, the parts don't match. You have two positives or two negatives. Well, neither one of those is going to create offspring. You need a positive and a negative, so to speak. And yet, homosexuality is defended by the appearance of homosexual behavior among some members of the animal kingdom. How many have ever heard of gay penguins? Well, Matt's heard of them. I've heard of them. Anyone else? Now, there's a handful of animals that are alleged to be homosexual. Well, what would cause you to think that they're homosexual? They don't mate, because they can't. So why would you think they're homosexual? You are imposing your beliefs onto those animals. So if you see a couple of male penguins hanging out all the time, the assumption is, well, they must be gay. Well, that's one way to look at it. Or it could be that they're just really good friends.
It could be that, they've fought with other male penguins and they've just never won to get it mate. So
There could be lots of explanations for it.
They all look the same, so how can you tell the difference?
They all what?
They all look the same, so how can you tell the difference?
Now you're getting out of my lane. I think they can tell the difference.
They know, right?
They know.
You
But-
have a handful of steers, they will often choose a smaller steer and try to mate with it.
Okay.
I mean, there's no females available.
Huh. So there is an attempt to mate between male steers.
Yes,
Okay.
obviously they can't do it.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work, but the attempt is there. So that would be an example.
They'll actually kill that animal by trying to mate with it.
Well, that would be, I don't know what I would describe that as. We only had one steer on our farm. So we never saw them try to mate with another one.
Behavior,
Yeah.
of course, it's caused by,
Or
it's caused by
ignorance.
some of the stuff we give them to make them gain weight faster, and then
Oh,
it's the
yes.
fact that there's no females available.
They
Okay.
don't realize there's no female available, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that none of us can do is crawl inside the head of an animal and figure out what they're thinking when they're trying to do stuff. The example that Hazel used, and who knows, maybe penguins did try to mate and it just didn't work. I don't know. But all of those things are included in something that animals have. Well, we have them too. The difference is we have morality, which helps us sort them out. It's called urges. I mean, dogs have tried to hump my leg. And probably a bunch of your legs too. It's not going to work, but they have that urge. They're in heat or whatever, and so they want to do that particular act. And it really doesn't matter what they're doing it to. So I don't know if that's the case, Hazel, or if it's just they're in heat and they have to act it out. I don't know.
Could be a show of dominance.
Could be. I mean, she did say it'd be a smaller steer. They didn't try to do it to a larger steer. So we don't really know what's causing that. When we think of sexual desire, it's more than just, I have an urge to do something. There is supposed to be some sort of attraction there, right? I mean, I think. Which we are imposing that on animals, that they are attracted to each other. Which we really can't say because we're not in their heads. The same thing can be said of transgenderism, which is probably not the best word to use, but it's the one that you guys know, which is another word for sexual dysphoria, which is the more clinical term, and has long been what it's called when a male thinks he's trapped in a female's body, or a female thinks she's trapped in a male's body, or whatever it is, I don't know. However, you know what I'm trying to say. That's the way it used to be described, as sexual dysphoria. Then they came up with transgenderism, which is not the best title. But again, how does that help evolution? I mean, I don't think it does, but... So, the conundrum. If these things are matters of choice, promiscuity, homosexuality, transgenderism, if those things are just matters of choice, then who's responsible for those choices?
People.
The people, yeah. The promiscuous, the homosexual, the transgender, they're responsible for those choices. Bless you.
Thank you.
Only one this time, huh? All right, if the people are not to blame, and these are just the way people are, then what's to blame? Evolution. They have evolved to become that. Again, that has nothing to do with creationism, but it's what they would say is, well, how many of you have heard a gay person say, I was born this way? No. They weren't, but that's what they claim. Now, could they have been suffering from some type of dysphoria? Maybe. I mean, I've known little kids that seemed strange to me, and it didn't surprise me when they came out as gay later on. But even that is not normal. It's not natural. There's something in that child that is not the way it is for everybody else. Anyway, so one way that folks try to get around all of this is to claim there's no such thing as right or wrong. And that's one way. Promiscuity isn't wrong, because there is no such thing as wrong. Homosexuality is not wrong. Transgenderism isn't wrong, because there's no such thing as wrong. There's only what feels good. Or what feels bad, I suppose. But that's all there is how you feel. And that's a postmodern philosophy. That truth doesn't matter. There's only what you feel. So that's how evolution has impacted sexual behaviors. Race relations, specifically issues of morality. Well, moral goodness is determined by whatever helps a person become stronger, healthier, or richer, or etc. So something is morally good if it helps someone become stronger, healthier, richer, or in some other way beneficial to them. It is the morality of might makes right. If man is nothing more than an animal, then his worth and value are relative. If you are nothing more than an animal, then you have relative worth and value. Therefore, you can be sacrificed if it's for the common good. This is commonly applied with issues such as abortion, euthanasia, which is sometimes forced. In America, it's not forced very often. In other countries, it is. In Canada, I just saw a headline that drug users can choose to be medically killed, physician-assisted suicide. Anyway, moving on, genetic manipulation. Genetic manipulation means trying to make better children. If Tracy and I wanted to, we could have had taller kids, I suppose. You would have to mess with the genes while they were still in utero, but it could have been done. Maybe not 100% successful, but give us a chance for taller kids, or make sure they're all blonde or whatever. So that's what genetic manipulation is. And then sexual issues like pornography, adultery, etc. There's no morality with any of those things. Only what makes you feel good. This is what Hitler used as a defense for what he did. He said the Jews were weak and holding humanity back. Therefore, it was better to exterminate them, leaving a purified, strong, white race. Do we have any modern-day Nazis that hate Jews and want to see them exterminated?
Yes, apparently.
Hamas,
Yeah.
Hezbollah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be terrorists. Anybody, not anybody, but most people who are pro-Palestinian are anti-Jew. I mean, that's just part of who they are. They've been taught from the time they were kids to hate Jewish people, to consider them monsters, subhuman, which is what Hitler called Jews. So, as it says in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. Nazism did not die out. It just reappeared with a different name. But it's still with us. Anti-Semitism has always been with us and will always be with us till the Lord comes back. Now, the difference with Hitler from the Palestinians was he also exterminated the physically and mentally handicapped for the same reason. They are impeding humanity's evolution. At least that's what he said. And so he wanted to get rid of anything that would limit our future success.
Isn't it in Iceland or Greenland, one of them two, where it's a law that if you're carrying a child with Down syndrome, you have to
Iceland.
abort it?
Iceland.
Iceland. I know it was one of the two.
Yeah, for that reason. They don't want those babies in their gene pool. So how do you get rid of those genes? Kill them. Yep. Hitler made frequent use of Darwin's theories. Now, a few quotes. Norman Geisler said in the 19th century, God died. That's what modernism said. God died. As a consequence, in the 20th century, man died. Or to put it another way, first man killed God, then man killed man. Now again, this is the social implications of evolution. And human life, for many people, is disposable. I don't know if it's because of video games. I don't think it is. But there's such a callousness towards other human life. I just read something in the news about what the Hamas terrorists did to female captives. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's horrific. It's beyond what any, if you haven't read it already, and I'm not suggesting that you should, it's just horrific. It's absolutely demonic. There's no other way to say it. Why? These are fellow human beings. Not to Hamas, they weren't. These were subhumans, not worthy of any type of mercy or grace of any kind. And so they treated them horribly. And I don't understand it. I shot a chicken and killed it when I was like 8 years old. And I've never shot another living thing since then, other than my brother. It was a BB gun. But other than that, I've just never wanted to go hunting. But anyway, digress. But yeah, it just boggles my mind that humanity can be so inhuman towards other human beings. Ernst Haeckel, his quote, "With this single argument," talking about evolution, "the mystery of the universe is explained, the deity annulled," that means done away with, "and a new era of infinite knowledge is ushered in." So again, he was a big proponent of evolution. With this single argument, the mystery of the universe is explained, the deity annulled, and a new era of infinite knowledge is ushered in. It was Haeckel who first came up with the idea that humans go through an evolutionary process as they develop from the embryonic stage. Remember when I talked about having tails? He's the one who said we had tails at some point of our development. His work was widely published as fact. Later, his evidence was shown to be completely faked and his theory debunked. So even though he was widely published, it took a while until finally evidence could prove that he had faked it, that his theories about embryonic development were completely nonsense. However, his theory or theories continued to be taught, often thinly veiled, in high school classrooms. I would not be surprised if your children or grandchildren have been taught that at one time human beings had tails, either in utero or in a previous evolution, and they were vestigial organs that eventually fell off, but at one time we had tails. Who made great use of Haeckel's work? Nazis did. Friedrich Nietzsche said, "God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him." Yeah, that's kind of what evolution is all about. Now we move on to Darwin, who staunchly opposed caring for the poor, the mentally ill, even the sick. He thought that vaccinations were bad because they allowed the weak members of humanity to perpetuate. So, he staunchly opposed caring for the poor, the mentally ill, even the sick. He thought vaccinations were bad because they allowed the weak members of humanity to perpetuate, making all of humanity weaker. He said, quote, "Except man himself, hardly anyone is so ignorant as to allow his worst animals to breed." Hitler intended to eventually exterminate all Christians. Why? Why do you suppose Hitler would want to eventually get rid of all Christians? Because he, go ahead.
Because we like to take care of those people.
Yeah. Because he acknowledged our adherence to creationism. Now this is Germany, 1930s. There weren't a lot of evolutionists there. There were a lot of creationists there. And therefore, if you are a creationist, what do you know about God? He's gracious. He is merciful. And if God is gracious and merciful, what are we supposed to be? Gracious and merciful, like him. Be holy, for God, your Father, is holy. And our adherence to creationism and everything that that entails contradicted what he was trying to do. Who was it that stood up to Hitler when he's trying to kill all the Jews? It was mostly Catholics and some Lutherans. Some of you might have heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He's the famous Lutheran pastor that joined with the Catholics in trying to fight against Hitler. And he was caught trying to assassinate Hitler, and he was hanged for it. And that's why he's considered a Lutheran martyr, I suppose. But today, who is at the forefront of trying to stop abortions from being performed? Catholics. And who's coming alongside them? LCMS Lutherans. At least some of us are. The reason I say some of us is because I can't speak for every LCMS Lutheran. Sadly, I'm sure that there are LCMS Lutherans who support abortion. I'd like to believe everybody in this room opposes it though, so at least I can say that. But we love life. We love other human beings. We want to protect other human beings, even if they say and do all kinds of horrible things.
Well, the crux of it is, as Christians, we believe that every human being has a soul and is a child of God, and therefore of value, infinite value.
Right.
It's not just that we are nice to people, or we love people, but we recognize that person's intrinsic value and that God wants him to live.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, let's get political for a second. Israel has threatened to wipe out Hamas. Just go into Gaza and root them out. And along the way, they're going to kill innocent civilians. Is Israel right or wrong to do that? I'm asking you.
Well, when they first went into the land of Israel, we told them to kill everybody above the height of the wagons. Wagon wheels.
Yeah. But that was a long time ago. And we don't necessarily live under Old Testament law anymore. I'm devil's advocate. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just playing off of what you said.
Haven't they warned the people beforehand? I mean, don't they have time to leave?
They do. Does anybody know why many civilians have not left Gaza? Anybody know?
Partly it's not
They
get out.
can't get out.
They
One thing.
can't cross borders.
Well, because other countries aren't taking them in, so they don't have anywhere to go, first of all. But even if they tried to go, who's stopping them?
Their government.
Hamas, which is the government of Gaza. So the people they elected to be their leaders are stopping them. Does anybody know what Hamas is telling them?
Israel's lying.
Well, they always say that, yeah. Why should they stay? Because if they die, it'll be as a martyr. If Israel happens to kill you in some of their strikes, you will die a martyr. Rather than fleeing your family and trying to save your life, stay where you are and be a casualty for Allah, a martyr for their God. Is Israel right or wrong to want to attack Gaza?
Well, all killing is wrong. The killing of another human being is wrong. If we accept that all human beings have souls and are children of God, He wants them to live. On the other hand, as we view justice, they would be just.
Mhm.
And they are also trying to protect their own people. The purpose for it is, again, just. I don't want to say righteous, but that's what we have governments for, is to keep us and protect us.
Yeah.
So from that, there's a difference between right and what is just. Or what God would want and what we would see as just.
Well, I would say there is such a thing as a just war, and that would involve killing other people. Hopefully just soldiers, but still involves killing people.
Which actually God did sometimes.
God did a lot of killing, mostly in the Old Testament. There's a couple examples in the New Testament, but lots in the Old Testament.
Yeah, He wiped out many, many people who didn't believe in Who didn't believe in Him, and so I guess if Hamas doesn't believe in God.
Yeah.
But it's not our place to make that decision.
Does anybody know how Hamas came to power in Gaza? Israel used to control that land. They gave it to the Palestinians and said, choose your own leader. They chose Hamas. That used to belong to Israel. They gave it up. And they let the Palestinians choose their own leaders. So what does that affect your thoughts on this matter at all?
Put it on themselves.
You could make that
We
argument.
basically have seen that through the ages, where they've joined other people and
they accept their gods. So this isn't anything new.
Nope, it's not. Well, some people think it's a simple issue, some people think it's complex. Some people are calling for a ceasefire, other people are saying kill them all. If you haven't thought a lot about it, you should. If for no other reason, Israel is our only ally in the region. And what happens to them will eventually matter to us. Because if we don't have Israel on our side in the Middle East, we'll be in trouble. All right, let's move on. Other thoughts. If evolution is true, what would make murder absolutely wrong? Now, Hazel already mentioned, because we're Christians, or Judeo-Christians even, we value life because we recognize it's created in the image of God. If you don't believe that, what would make murder inherently or absolutely wrong? I don't know. Because I've always operated under morals informed by God's word.
Well, if you were killing a prime example of the species, like Hitler wouldn't have killed a perfect physical example of a human being.
Yeah, he would have.
White, intelligent, strong.
But what if it was a Jewish human being?
It's
So, yeah, then you would.
Yeah. If it was a Germanic, white, yeah, he would love that.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There were certain people that would have been wrong even under Hitler to murder.
Well, I don't know about that. You could be right. I've never really thought about whether Hitler would kill a good German. Well, I'll put it this way. If there was a good, perfect German, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, everything was great, but he opposed Hitler, would Hitler think it was okay to kill him?
Yes, he did.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But see, then he would be fighting people, it would be like.
Well, he'd be going
He'd
against...
like to do because he's opposing the improvement in the.
Yeah. Here's a person who could greatly enhance our culture, our people, but he opposes me, so I'm going to get rid of him, which I think is what he would do.
He was trying to be a deity himself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that's where he did not just believe in evolution. He believed some other things too that made him dangerous for lots of reasons. But would there be anything to make murder absolutely wrong if you were an evolutionist? I say no. And one of the reasons for that is because when I had a debate with somebody who was an evolutionist and I brought this issue up, they stayed true to their principles. And they said the only reason we think murder is wrong is because culturally it's not accepted. In other cultures where murder is accepted, it's not wrong. We only think it's wrong because we think it's bad. But if they don't oppose it, then it's not wrong. Does everybody kind of understand? I'm not sure I'm being clear on that. But C.S. Lewis said, we know that what Hitler did was wrong, and we know that he knew it was wrong. That's what enables us to judge him. That's different from this person I was talking with that said every culture has their own morals, and they can decide for themselves what morality they want for themselves and their people. C.S. Lewis would have said, that's crazy. We all know murder is wrong. And it doesn't matter what culture you're a part of, everybody knows that's wrong. And I think Lewis is right about that. But that would also require the idea of a universal morality that we all have, which Lewis believed, and this person that I was debating did not. He thought morality was a cultural construct, and each culture can create their own. By the way, that all came up because there were kittens being glued to the highway in the middle of January. It happened many years ago, and I said, in a provocative way, well, what's wrong with that? And I just got blasted. I said, no, I know it's wrong. I'm asking you why it's wrong. And they say, well, it's life. I said, but we kill human beings in our country all the time. And you're worried about kittens. And that's where things kind of went from there.
Well, we kill animals.
Many years ago, I don't do that anymore. I used to argue with people online all the time. And it was helpful. It gave me a lot of good stories for when I was teaching. And I would save those conversations and show them to my class. You know, taking out the curse words and whatnot. Not mine, but other people's curse words. But I enjoyed sharing those with students because I showed them this is what people are like out there in the real world. And there are some people out there who would say that murder is not absolutely wrong. It's only wrong if it's wrong in a culture. Next question. Why should anyone choose to help the poor and the needy? Common good demands that these weaker ones be eliminated. So whatever helps a person survive or thrive, to be strong or successful, etc., is determined to be morally good. Well, why is it morally good if it's helping something that's weaker to persevere? It would be better to eliminate them. But again, as Christians, we live under a different set of morals. A couple more bullet points and then we'll be done. I guess you're not going to need your Bibles today, but next week you absolutely will need your Bibles. 1982, Joseph Ton, leader of the largest Baptist church in Romania, said there were two factors which destroyed Christianity in Western Europe. I think we all recognize, well, maybe not, Christianity is mostly dead in Western Europe. If you go there, the only people going to church are tourists. That's an oversimplification of it. There are still some good, faithful Christians there, but not like it used to be. It's much, much different. Why? What caused the death of Christianity in Western Europe? This is still from the quote. One was the theory of evolution. The other was liberal theology. And then later on he amended his quote to say, actually, liberal theology is just evolution applied to the Bible and to our faith. Liberal theology is evolution applied to the Bible and our faith. Do we have liberal theology in Benson, Minnesota? Yep. Yeah, not in Benson. No, not at all. I don't know that I have to say any more than that, but yeah, it's everywhere. And it works hand in hand with evolution. ELCA does not believe in evolution. It does believe in theistic evolution. If you go back to the first session we had, what is theistic evolution? Gary, what is theistic evolution? You weren't here, but I'm just guessing you know what theistic evolution is.
Your God is changing. I mean,
Yeah.
Your focus, your God is always changing.
Well, it means evolution is true, and God did it. It didn't happen randomly, because of course that doesn't make any sense anyway. So God directed evolution. That's what theistic evolution is. And many members of the ELCA and other liberal, mainline religious groups all believe that. It's ridiculous, but they believe it. Some LCMS members perhaps do. It's not the formal position of the synod, but I'm sure there are members of the LCMS who believe that too. All right, last point. Can Christianity also be cited for a basis for evil behavior throughout history?
Yeah.
I said that. Can't Christianity be cited as a basis for evil behavior? Yes, but none of those things can be defended in Scripture. Those were examples of people using Christianity or Judaism, but not practicing it. Did God ever tell his people to murder other people? Or, well, let me rephrase it. To kill other people? Yes. Yeah. Murder them? Maybe not. Murder is more of a loaded term. Killing them? Yeah. But was it justified? Probably, yeah. In the New Testament, does Jesus ever tell anybody to kill someone else? Not that I recall. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So when those things happen in our world, not when they happened in the Bible, although that's true as well, but when they happen in the world by people who are Jewish or Christian, are those people practicing the tenets of their faith? No. Judaism says murder is wrong. Christianity says murder is wrong. They will twist it, they'll distort it, but those are the teachings of our faith. Is murder wrong in Islam? No. It's actually promoted. Infidels, if you can't convert them, kill them. All right, communism, Marxism, Nazism, they all base their morals on evolutionary principles. And that's how they can be justified, is on that basis. The most basic summary of evolution is survival of the fittest. And that's how a lot of these people live, is if you can handle it, great. If you can't, too bad. It's not my job to worry about what helps you or benefits you. It's only my job to worry about me. You got to worry about yourself. Is that what Christianity says? No. We are our brother's keepers. And we should always strive to be our brothers and sisters' keepers. Next time we will get into the biblical issues. We're almost out of time. Does anybody have any closing thoughts?